for those who don't know me, I'm Allison Andrikokis. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Addison Teachers Association. We are hosting this Q&A with 4 candidates who are running for the Addison School District 4 Board of Education. They are 4 candidates that the Addison Teachers Association has endorsed. And so we wanted to host this event. Obviously, in better times, we would be together somewhere where we could be in each other's company and people could just sit and ask questions, but this is the next best thing. So really, this is about these 4 candidates that I'm going to introduce in a second, giving them an opportunity to introduce themselves to the community, to the ASD4 community, to the Addison community. And we, myself and my co-president, Amanda Zarol, who is going to be doing the questions with the candidates tonight, we're just here to facilitate and let them really share why they're here running, and answer community questions. So with that, just before I introduce candidates, just some things to note. Amanda and I believe is monitoring the chat. We have questions that were submitted in advance, so we will start with those questions after we introduce the candidates and they have a chance to introduce themselves. But if you have a question, you can put it in the chat directly to Amanda if we have time to get to it. If not, we are saving the chat and we will provide questions for follow-up. So that way we can answer as many of those. We also, there's going to be another community event on March 30th, where if other questions come up, we will save them and we can use them at that. And I think with that, we're ready to get started. So I'd like to first introduce Taso Triantafillos. He's going to introduce himself as one of our 4 candidates.
Allison, appreciate the introduction. I appreciate everybody taking the time to meet with us this evening. And you guys actually doing a fantastic job of organizing this in such a short notice. My name is Taso Triantafillos. I'm a former board member between 2013 and 17. I actually have 4 children, 2 who are still in District 4 and 2 are in District 88. I'm pretty excited about having the opportunity to serve the community one more time. And I am all about making sure that we are establishing, obviously, transparent, open communications between ourselves as a board, the community, the teachers, and making sure that we're all striving for one common goal, which is obviously a better education for our children. So I'm pretty excited about April 6th and hope to earn your vote.
Thanks, Taso. So next, Ed Castillo, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, so my name is Eduardo Castillo. I'm an Addison resident. I have 3 daughters. They all attend the district. 2 of them go to Fullerton School. One of them is over at Indian Trail. I grew up in the area, not in Addison. I grew up in Villa Park, but I did attend District 88. I went to Willowbrook High School, which is a sister city to our school here in Addison at the high school. I'm currently employed as a sergeant at the DuPage County Sheriff's Office. I've been there for about 13 years. My current role right now is I deal with community relations, homeowner associations. I work with organizers, for example, Special Olympics Illinois. We raise meals and hand out meals for Meals on Wheels for seniors. So we're also pretty heavily involved, and some of the people on here may recognize me. My wife and I are pretty active in the PTA here at Fullerton. And the reason I ran was parents were approaching and they felt like they weren't being heard. They felt like the voices didn't matter. They felt like the board, residents, and staff were not all on the same page. So that was one of the big reasons why I decided to get involved and see if we can make a change.
Thanks, Ed. And now Dan Medina, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, ATA, for this opportunity. Thank you, community members, for attending tonight. My name is Dan Medina. I've only been living in Addison for about 4 years, but I have a first grader at Stone Elementary and a soon-to-be kindergartner in the fall who will be attending there as well. I am a firefighter. For the last 14 years, I've been a licensed paramedic, and so I've dedicated my entire life, adult life, to service of community. And in attending some of the board meetings, obviously virtual, I noticed that there was a disconnect with the community members, and felt that disconnect as a community member. And when obtaining signatures to get on the ballot, that was one of the main things that was a constant in every person that would sign my ballot. My signature was, I feel ignored. I feel like I don't have a voice. And oftentimes it was, I don't even know who our board members are. So that's one of the things that I want to address and kind of bring to light, is bring the community and the parents back to the boardroom, bring them back to knowing who the board is and getting the board back into the community.
Thanks, Dan. And then finally, our final candidate here tonight, Christen Bollig. Chris, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks so much. So hi, everyone. My name is Chris Bollig. I'm going to start with what got me thinking about running, and that is, like Dan, I'm a relatively new Addison resident. I've been here since October 2019. And the first board meeting that I joined, the first thing that I noticed was that there were no women on the board. There were seven men serving as our representatives. And so that, again, just kind of piqued my interest. And as I began talking to community members, again, similar story as Dan, gathering signatures for the ballot petition, I heard consistent feedback from people that they felt a lack of transparency and engagement with the existing board members. And so I view that as a significant problem and something that really needs to be addressed. Beyond being able to bring the kind of a diversity and new perspective to the board in terms of being a woman, I have a number of other experiences that I think would lead to being a successful board member. I also have 2 children at Stone, one in 2nd grade and one at kindergarten. So I am certainly an ASD4 parent. I'm also the vice president of shared operations at a large company that is based out of Chicago. My prior role at that same company was as the vice president of regulatory affairs. So I actually have legislative and regulatory experience at the state and federal level. And then I also serve on the board of a nonprofit based in Chicago called Changing Worlds, that provides arts programming primarily to CPS students who are in schools that don't have arts programming. And it's specifically focused on improving cross-cultural understanding and building inclusive communities. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. And we are very excited to start answering your questions.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over now to Amanda. And Amanda, we can get started with questions.
All right, thank you, Allison. And as Allison said, we did have some questions that were submitted ahead of time on our Google form. I'm going to read through the questions in the order that they were submitted. And then we're just going to go until 8 o'clock. So any questions that you have in the chat or that we're not able to get to, we will have our board candidates follow up with those questions. And then again, we will have another meeting on March 30th. So the first question is actually for Taso. Taso, you were voted off in the last election. You also tried to run for 2 boards simultaneously. Why would Addison residents want you back on the board?
That's a good question. Actually, you get that a lot. Really quick correction. Every board member is elected to a 4-year term. At the conclusion of that 4-year term, that's it. You have to run for re-election again. So I wasn't voted off. My 4-year term expired. And that was in 2017. At the time, I had plenty available time on my schedule to take on 2 different board positions, one with District 4 and one with College of DuPage. there was no conflict between the two board seats. I actually serve multiple boards today as an advisor and an executive board. So I believe that our responsibility as community members is to give back to our community as much as possible. And that's what I was trying to do between District 4 and College DuPage for higher education. You know, why would the Addison community want me back? Well, during my term, I was probably the most transparent and available board member to parents and teachers. In fact, I probably engaged a lot of parents and a lot of teachers in conversations, understanding what the pain points were and some of the key challenges they were facing in their classrooms. I was responsible for actually launching the acceleration of the District 4 technology plan. My experience in relationship as a CEO at one of America's leading cybersecurity companies obviously puts me in a position where I can actually help our school district and teachers and our children to continue to expand the use of technology and protect their data at the same time.
Right, thank you. Our next question is for Mr. Castillo. What is your stance on discriminatory hiring practices? I noticed that on the August 2020 Board of Education meeting, a blue card was submitted and you stated about the possibility of hiring a female superintendent. In my personal feeling, a superintendent should be hired based on experience and qualifications, not gender or race.
Thank you for that question. I do remember submitting that question. And there was that question is partly not complete. It's an incomplete question. The first part of that question had to deal with salaries and the administration level and how could we be using those salaries. The second part was, yes, the possibility of looking into a female superintendent. So I think that should always be a possibility. And I agree with the person that asked this question. We should possibly be looking at everybody. There shouldn't be any discrimination at all. But to go back to Kristen's point, at that time, I think it's very hard for the community to have a voice if we haven't explored all possibilities. Females, males, they all have the right to be heard, and we have the right and the obligation to seek the ones with the best qualification. It was a question that I felt I should ask, and I feel that the board should take a good look at all candidates. It shouldn't just be male, female. It should be the best candidates for our school district and for our children.
And Ed, I'm going to add something here too, because I think there's a lot of initiatives within corporate America, but all kinds of organizations to ensure that they have a diverse workforce, right? And typically what that looks like, in my experience, is you make sure you have a very diverse set of candidates you're looking at, right? And you will always ultimately hire the one that is most qualified. And many times that will be a white man. But in order to make sure that you have a good slate of candidates, you need to really make sure and say, are the 7 people we're considering, is that a diverse group in and of itself? So that, I think, is how we get to making sure we have the absolute best person that we're hiring. It's just making sure that the pool that we're looking at has a lot of different representation.
Thank you. The next question is for anyone. Would you change the public comment section of the current monthly meetings? And if so, how?
And I can start just as the one who's newer. I don't, as someone who's only been to the meeting since I joined or moved to Addison, it seems to, it's not a two-way dialogue, right? And I know during a public comment period that's typically how that proceeds. But my take is that that's really one of the only opportunities that exists for any kind of dialogue between the community and board members. And so I just think that in general, whether it's through the blue card process and board meetings or through other listening sessions, that we need to provide more opportunities for, again, two-way dialogue and real meaningful engagement. That's something that I think we need to work on.
Let me expand on that a little bit too. Not only is it just an importance in the community dialogue portion of the meetings, but also on agenda items, and not just school board and school boards across the country, but all boards have a tendency of putting agenda item X, Y, Z, number, you name it, and a name to it. And oftentimes there's very little description to that. And if, as board members, we choose to not have a discussion to clarify to the community what it is we're actually discussing and voting on, I personally feel that that is a disservice to our members in the community, because we're making decisions that impact the children of our community based on the information we know, but we're not giving that information out to them. That's the disconnect that the community members are talking about. And that's what I, if elected, intend to kind of bring to the table and try to change, is bring those dialogues out there, bring that information out to the community, and have them be a little bit more informed day to day.
All right, thank you. The next question, if elected, would you be willing to take on executive roles within the board? And that would include president, vice president, and secretary.
Well, let me jump in really quick and try answering that question. So I believe any one of us is qualified and capable of serving the community in any necessary role for the board. I know Chris is more than capable, Dan is more capable, and Ed is more than capable of serving any one of those roles. The reality is that they're very busy. There's a lot of responsibility that come with that, with those roles. And I think this group, this audience here, or these individuals, these candidates here are very qualified to take on those responsibilities. Also, there is a restructuring meeting that takes place, because I've been there and done that, behind the, at the board, where we define roles and responsibilities or committees, and we elect the new executive team. So that is something that I hope to take part. I believe it's sometime in April, right shortly after the election. So look forward to that.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think that clearly that restructuring meeting, right, that's where the 7 board members will make a determination based on, or a determination of who is best suited to fill those roles. And so I certainly have a willingness to fill one of those roles if it is the collective decision of the group that I would be best qualified for it. I think that's something we are all looking forward to, is having a very collaborative and supportive environment with each other. So I don't know the skill set and the experiences of everyone who will be on the board. So I think once we get to that point, we'll be able to figure it out and identify who can best serve the community in those positions.
All right, thank you. The next question, I have a 2nd grader who is struggling with hybrid learning. I would never think my child at 7 years old would deal with depression, low self-esteem, and anxiety due to lack of social interaction with kids her age. She misses her friends and hands-on learning in school. We introduced extra tutoring and therapy with a counselor to help her cope with changes COVID has brought upon us. What is your plan for the next school year? Will our children be able to return to full-time in-person learning?
If it's okay, I'll start this one. So I think the goal of every parent is to have their child go back to school full time. Nobody could have predicted this pandemic. Nobody could have predicted all the things, all the safety measures that we had to put in place. I think if the board were to communicate and reach out with other agencies, other entities, other taxing bodies, we have a park district that the residents pay money into. A lot of their stuff has been canceled. We have a library that the taxpayers pay money into. We have a township, we have a village, we have other school districts. I think we have to start talking to these other entities. We have to start talking with these other districts and see what works for them, see what doesn't work for them. We also have to work with the park district. I know District 45 has a program with the YMCA where they bring in staff, they bring in tutors, and they have a collaboration where they work together and they offer childcare services. We really have to start working on, these partnerships with these groups. If we need room, I would think that the library would be open to a dialogue of maybe they have space available, maybe the high school has space available, maybe the park district has space available. So we do have to come up with multiple options because this pandemic has caused a lot of changes. A lot of people have had to adjust the way of life, had to give up work. So we do have to have options for these residents. And that goal is if a parent has to choose between childcare, putting food on the table, or sending their child to school, isn't one that they should have to experience. We should have multiple options for them. And like I said, if we work with other groups around us, I think we can make it happen.
And I just want to add a little bit for this parent. I think your child is not alone. We're all dealing with the same pain and suffering. Most children out there are dealing with the exact same feelings. So you're not alone. Everybody's dealing with the same exact thing. So this is nothing to be ashamed about, nothing to feel bad. I mean, yeah, we all feel bad about this. But I think the best cure for this is how fast can we return to normal through best practices and safely.
Okay, thank you. The next question is actually for each of you. So I'd like to ask each of the candidates what their thoughts are on transparency and openness to information and decision-making as it pertains to the district. Too often it feels that parents are left in the dark on critical decisions. I'd like to know what the candidates would do to help address these concerns. So if you can each address this one.
I'll start. And, I think I referenced it earlier when I talked about really what motivated me to run. And that was that I heard from a lot of parents that they felt like there was a real lack of transparency and engagement. And to me, that is so important. I think that when you look at any board serving kind of a diverse community, a vast set of constituents, you are never going to be able to consistently make decisions that absolutely every person agrees with, right? Because we all have different perspectives on things that should happen. What becomes really important, though, is that everyone has an opportunity and is actually heard, right? Because at the end of the day, I think that people would feel a little bit better with a decision that they disagreed with if they felt like someone at least heard their voice and understood their perspective. That's an aspect that's missing to me, and there's just like an underlying respect foundation there that I think needs to exist. So that's one of the points of my platform, and is one of the things that I am confident, and they'll all speak to it, but confident that this slate of candidates will absolutely bring to the board, and you'll see real change in this space going forward if we are part of the upcoming school board.
Go ahead.
Dan, you want to go?
Yeah, sorry. I think one of the things that you'll hear from all of us consistently is going to be bringing that community aspect back into the boardroom and bringing that boardroom out to the community. There is that disconnect, and we need to mend that. We need to figure out a way to get that back into this school board, into this school district. Whether that's something as simple as when we can get back together is meet and greets with your board, get to know who we are, get to know who the board is at that time, if when it happens. But we need to get the community out there. We need to do something where we're inclusive to the Hispanic community, to the Latino community, to the people of color in our community. We need to be inclusive to all aspects of our community. And I've said this in speaking with the teachers. I've said this in speaking with us together in collaborative meetings and things like that. The individual school buildings do a great job of communicating with us as parents. The teachers do a great job of communicating with us as parents when it comes to parent to student issues. When it comes to legislative issues or things leading up to real, true decision-making that are going to impact the student body as a whole, the community as a whole, that is where we're lacking. And that's where we need to make amends as a board. And that's what I look forward to trying to fix.
I truly believe that each one of us here believes that communication is very important being transparent is very important. Making sure that each one of us is over communicating, making sure that people understand what the messaging is or what the initiatives are behind the scenes. So I feel very confident that each one of us will actually step up and make sure that we're reaching out and communicating to the community, making sure that they're on board with what we're doing and listening to them. So that's going to be very important for us. It's also important to understand that Addison is and I think everybody here understands this, that Addison is a very diverse community, and it is very different from the east side all the way to the west side, even the north side. So there are some huge social and cultural boundaries that we have to overcome. There's a lot of work to be done there. There's also huge economic disadvantages for families in lesser areas where they don't have access to the things that other families do, such as internet service, where they can't go to a website or they can't do certain things that other families can. So I think you have to become very aware that those are some of the disadvantages that others are dealing with, that we have to bridge that gap. And I think us four here have had several discussions around the same topic, and we clearly understand that there needs to be a plan on how to reach out to those individuals in making sure that we can clearly engage them and make them feel comfortable that they can come to a board meeting, or they can submit a blue card and it'll be read, and that we'll give them a proper answer. So communication is very important. I think it's part of the platform we were discussing all along.
And to finish it off, I think transparency in government is probably one of the most important things, and one of the most it's the best thing you could do to gain the trust of the community. If you go back and watch some of the meetings, especially when we had salary discussions with the teachers, when we had the pandemic, you will see that the board pretty much had only 2 or 3 people speaking. It was pretty much the president, the superintendent, and maybe a couple of the positions, the vice president. The current people on the board, they really don't say much. And I think they want to say stuff, and I think they should. I think that they should be bringing back what the community is asking of them. They should be bringing back what they are hearing in the schools. That way, there's good dialogue. When you go to the meetings, you know, I'm a Spanish speaker. English was my second language. I know that some of the Spanish speaking community is very shy. They don't know how to approach it. And I'm not 100% sure, but if I was on the board and I spoke Spanish, I would encourage people who spoke Spanish to come up and I would answer their question. If there was a language that we didn't speak, we could always coordinate with the community. We could always coordinate with the language line and have those questions answered. I actually had something fairly recent that has to do with transparency. I actually filed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information request, with the school. It was a 2-part request. The first part request was denied. And that request, I asked the district to provide me any emails that are used for school business, including private emails. They denied me that, and they cited that it was personal. So I am appealing that. And I think that's a good example of no transparency.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what are your thoughts on managing classroom size? And this is pre-pandemically speaking. How would you address situations where a given class exceeds the recommended guidelines outlined in the teacher's contract?
I mean, I'll say it's nice to think about pre-pandemically. That's what I'll start with. Seems like a long time ago. You know, I think that that's something that should not happen, right? I mean, there are recommended ratios for a reason. I am not a teacher. I actually have quite a few friends who do teach, one of whom has been out of ratio for years. And just seeing how taxing that is on her, and just the guilt that she has around not being able to meet the needs of her students because she has so many students in one classroom. It's not fair to the teacher and it's not fair to the students, right? And so there are clearly budget limitations that exist within a district, right? We only have a certain amount of money to spend, but a huge responsibility of the board is to evaluate and prioritize the ways that that money should be spent. And I think that certainly keeping classrooms within recommended ratios is a pretty big priority.
In kind of going along with that, look, our school buildings, they are what they are. Sometimes our classrooms are not the size needed, right, for the expansion of what we have in some of our school buildings. So does that mean that maybe we need to make a study about, you know, knocking down a building maybe and maybe making a bigger school? Maybe that has to be done. Maybe not something that the, you know, current board and administration may want to hear, but maybe we need to look at the infrastructure of our buildings and see if maybe something needs to be done about maybe expanding those classroom sizes. Maybe the pod system worked when those school buildings were built. Maybe that's not the case now. Our schools are small for the size of student ratios that we have. And, you know, in reading the contract, you know, we should be adhering to that. When that is a agreement that was made, and both sides should be adhering to that agreement. That's a binding agreement, and that's how I feel about that portion of that. It's not a you know, we might do this, we might do that, we might put an assistant in that classroom. No, if the numbers are there, we need to put the people in the classroom, or figure out a way to expand it to a second or third group of teaching instruction for that grade level.
Chris and Dan, your answers were great. I could tell you that as a former board member, listening to the Buildings and Grounds Committee reports, I don't recall ever hearing that there was a study around the classrooms. And I do understand that some of the schools were limited and have certain limitations based on their current configurations. I think there's an opportunity for us to obviously prioritize expanding those schools or doing some additions to accommodate smaller classroom sizes. So I like to also see that as well. So that is probably a question we'll be asking after April 6th.
I have to say, Taso, we appreciate your support.
All right, thank you. The next question, from the parents' perspective, there seems to be a lot of hostility and animosity between the administration, board, and teachers, which has a direct negative effect on our community. If elected, what would you recommend to help bridge this gap?
A big group hug. You know, unfortunately, that won't happen, but if elected, I can tell you that there's going to be a fresh new start. That's the reality of things. We're going to make sure that you have a friend across the table when you're negotiating your new contract, and we're going to make sure that we're listening to the community, we're listening to the teachers, because I believe we're all in this to make sure that our children get a better education. So I am willing to work on a fresh new start, and I think that's very important for us to keep in mind. There is change coming April 6th, and you will have the opportunity as a community to have obviously a better voice at that table, working through new contract negotiations with the teachers.
There's one thing about me that I don't like to do, and that's make promises. But there's one thing I can guarantee, that you know, once elected, I will come to the table open-minded and willing to work with all parties involved to make sure that we do the best for our kids, our community, and our teachers. So that's what I can guarantee. But like I said, that's one thing I don't like to do, is make promises, but I will make that guarantee.
As far as animosity, I think there's been a lot of factors, including the pandemic, including some of the personal issues people may be going through at home. But the role of the school board should be to provide the best tools to the staff and to provide the best possible education. It should be nothing more, nothing less. Anything personal, anything that they disagreed, any issues with labor, any issues with the busing company, that all has to go out the table. The job of the school board is to provide the best tools and to have a hired superintendents that will do what's best for the community and that will be open and available. Same thing with all the board members. Some of you guys that know me, I pretty much say what's on my mind, but I stand up for what's right. And what's right here is that my children, your children, all get the best possible education. We can't have that with any animosity. We have to come. My job as a police officer, I put on my uniform every day, and even though I might be having the worst day, I might have the worst call, I have to remain professional. I can't take it out on the next person. I can't let that dictate how I'm going to run my shift that day, how I'm going to treat my guys and my girls that work with me. The animosity has to go out the table, and it really starts with the community electing a board that is representative of them and what they want. It then transitions over to staff, and then it transitions back to the community. It's a kind of like a triangle effect. If you have a weak triangle, you're going to have those problems, which will include animosity, distrust, lack of transparency.
And I'll wrap it up by saying that this slate of candidates views the teachers and the staff as allies, right? We are all on the same team and we are all trying to achieve the same goal. And it's clear that not just here, but in other districts across the country, it oftentimes can get to a point where it's an adversarial relationship, and you will never get to good outcomes when you are fighting against each other. So staying really focused on the fact that we all want the same thing, and that is what's best for our students. And what's best for our students is to attract and retain the best teachers, right? And so that's just kind of philosophically something that the four of us are all on the same page about, and we would look to bring forward.
Okay, thank you. The next question, if elected during your term, the superintendent's contract will be up for renewal. What other criteria you would use to determine a successful candidate for the role?
I think that would have to be a board discussion. The board is elected by the community, and I think it goes back to the individual that asked the question. I don't really know the qualifications of our superintendent. I've taught Too Good for Drugs in various school districts, and there's doctors at almost every other school. It's a mixture of everybody. But I think we have to take a look and see what other districts are doing. Technology is a really big thing. So somebody that maybe brings technology would be great. Somebody that brings background in either education or teaching would be great. But I think at the end of the day, it's not something one of us could decide. It's going to have to be a group effort with the whole board.
Okay, thank you. The next question, why aren't there limitations as to how long a board member can serve? And it's not really a question that you can answer, but I guess what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I mean, I can provide some thoughts. I mean, in general, I think the philosophy around the concept would be if the community is unhappy with the person continuously being reelected, someone would run against them, right? The community would elect someone. I also tend to think that depending on the community, oftentimes there's not a lot of people who might be willing to serve in some of these positions, right? It is time consuming. It does take commitment. You do have to have passion for it. And I am so thankful that we have a wide slate of candidates running in this election so that we have people that I think would do a fantastic job of it. I think you don't want to be in a position where there's a term limit and then someone's not allowed to run because of that reason and there's no one else to step up. Having said that, I think that there are clearly issues that can arise when you have an incumbent in a position for an extended period of time, right? And that's even You know, people who are in the same job for 20 years maybe miss opportunities to do things differently or change things up because you have a narrow vision of the way that things have always been done. And so getting fresh perspective and changing things up, I think, is something that is very important. So regardless whether or not term limits drive that, I think that that's something that the community as a whole should think about when they're voting, is that, you know, having new ideas and fresh ways of thinking about things will add value to the community.
All right, thank you. We did get a question in the chat. This is for Dan and Ed. Taxes are pretty high. Dan just mentioned knocking down a school if needed. Besides the release of bonds, how do you plan to pay for capital improvements?
I guess that would be part of the study that would have to get done to figure all that out. Again, I'm not advocating for a tax increase. I'm advocating for a study to figure out where we can better suit a increase in the population of our children and trying to get our classroom sizes to an adequate level for the student to teacher ratio. And if that means conducting a study to see where and if a new building needs to be erected, or combining two schools together, to kind of make that happen. But I think that would need to initiate with a study, and that study would also indicate a drive of where the funds may need to come from. So at this point, that would have to be where that answer kind of comes from, that would be study driven at this point.
Yeah, and Dan, I think to just add on a little bit, what you were just hinting on a little bit is maybe potentially exploring state and federal grants that can actually help build some of those school expansion wings. That is probably one of the common source of capital that's used for a lot of the school improvements across the country.
That's what I was going to touch on. Having some experience working, for the county, I know that there's a lot of power in bulk buying. There's a lot of power in going in with another district. For example, if we have a nearby partner district that's paying a lot of money for cleaning supplies, they're paying a lot of money for removal of snow, whatever the case is, nothing says that we can't go in and do a large purchase with them. And bring the cost down. There's a lot of things we could explore. The CARES Act has given out billions of dollars. We should be exploring those. The state of Illinois, same thing. There's always opportunities for us to apply for grants. There's also private donors. There's private entities that will give grants out. So we don't always have to pay things with taxpayer money. I think if we have either a grant writer or somebody assigned to it, and that could be part of their job, they could spend a day looking for money that's out there, and money that wouldn't really cost us much. We could do fundraising. There's police foundations, there's fire foundations, there's teachers foundations, there's any kind of foundation that brings in thousands of dollars, and they will provide assistance. I think everybody here is here because they want our children to have the best possible education. And if we look and we really try, I think we could find a lot of money out there, and we don't have to raise taxes on anybody. We just have to put the work in and think outside the box.
Okay, thank you. The last question that we received was directed more towards the ATA rather than the board candidates. So we'll be addressing that, sending it via a separate email because we don't want to take away from the community being able to hear you speak. There aren't any more questions right now, but would any of you like to make any final statements before we wrap up?
So I think I'll take a stab at it. It's interesting because this group of 4 individuals, up until about 4 or 5 weeks ago, had not met each other or engaged with each other in any real way, right? And I recall the first meeting with the ATA when they notified us that they would be endorsing us. We had this question of, are we going to run as a slate, right? And to me, it was very important that it wasn't just about the ATA endorsing these gentlemen. I wanted to feel confident that I could put my name behind them as well. And so in the first follow-up meeting that we had, just the four of us, very quickly, I realized that this is a very committed, solid slate of candidates that I would be very proud to not just run with, but actually serve on the board with. And so, we have all talked about transparency and engagement and what we hope to do. I hope you all got something out of this today that helps you see the vision for what it is we want to accomplish. We all have Facebook pages and email addresses, and there are ways that you can continue to contact us. So I would encourage you all to, if you have additional questions, if you have feedback, or you want to engage in a dialogue that isn't so one-sided, because that's what Zoom requires of us in this kind of format, reach out to each of us, reach out to all of us. We are more than happy to engage. That's the primary reason that we're doing this today, and that, again, we're looking to run on the board. So I think I'll say thank you, everyone, so much for attending. And the most important thing is that everyone actually gets out and votes, right? So you can request your mail-in ballot. Currently, early voting will start at March 22nd at the Addison Township Building. If you like that election day thrill, April 6th, right, at your local polling place. So just please reach out to us, make sure you have a plan to vote. And again, thank you so much for spending some of your evening with us.
All right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ed.
No, if I could add, Kristen made a very excellent point. We all have very diverse backgrounds, knowledge, and experience. Taso, his knowledge of technology is going to be very, very important going forward. Just from my experience, my children are probably going to pass me up in technology and the use of technology in the next couple of years. So having a board member like him is awesome. It's something that he could give us information on, that he could give us what's new, what's really going out there, what are some of the things that are happening and where are they happening. Dan Medina, he's a public servant just like I am here in Addison. His job is to make sure that people are safe. He brings a background that I would know very little about, just like he wouldn't know very much about the law enforcement side. I bring experience in law enforcement and communication. And then Kristen brings the business side of it. There's things that I can learn from her and things we can learn from each other. What I will say is we make a very good team. And if you guys know, I'm always available. Everybody knows where I live. There's no secrets. You could contact me anyway, and I will get back to you. I will have a discussion with you. It may not be something we agree on, but I will always hear your concern. And going forward, I will use one email. It will be the district email. I will not be using any private emails. I will be available. There's nothing to hide with me. I go out, everybody sees me. I'm happy that I'm a police officer in this time and age, because we go through our ups and downs, but through it all, I remain loyal to my community, and I hope to extend that with the board.
I'm going to jump in and add my closing comments. And Kristen did a phenomenal job covering all bases. Ed, you did a great job complimenting us. Thank you very much. And Dan, you said some great things earlier too. I could say that one thing is true. This group is extremely diverse. We come from different parts of the village of Addison, our little community in DuPage County. And we're all very excited and truly committed to make sure that our kids' education comes first. I feel that the teachers have that I know for a fact, teachers aren't doing it because they're getting paid crazy amounts of money. They're doing it because they're committed. They're very, they love their jobs. They have a passion for teaching. And I know their parents are concerned about their children's education. And I think it's time for us to make sure that we take a step forward and focus on what's best for our children by making sure we get back to school safely. I do feel that each one of us in our community feels that. So we do have a diverse team that comes from different parts of the village. We do represent a different geographic and even cultural background. So we do bring that diversity to the table. We're looking for everybody to show up on March 22nd for early voting. And then on April 6th will be the consolidated election. I know from experience that consolidated election turnout is pretty low. I have a feeling this is going to be a very highly contested race, but we really need everybody to show up and go out and vote. It's going to be a very important election cycle. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to round that out by saying thank you to you guys for attending tonight, the community. Thank you for giving us your time. You guys had other options and you chose to be here with us tonight. So thank you very much for that. And please, if you have any other questions, feel free to send them over to Amanda or the Teachers Association, and meet us again on the 30th with another one. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much to our candidates, to the community, everybody for joining us tonight. We are going to have another meeting like this on March 30th. There will be more information coming out. If you follow our Addison Teachers Association Facebook page, we'll be sharing out links to different opportunities that we have to meet and interact with the candidates that we're endorsing. Also, just so that everybody knows, we did record this Zoom session, so we will be sharing it on YouTube and hopefully from our Facebook page this weekend. So if you have any neighbors, friends, family members that weren't able to make it, they will be able to view the Zoom as well. And like everybody said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we can get those questions addressed with the candidates as well. So if there are no other questions, thank you everyone for coming tonight, and we hope you have a nice evening.